Hi, I'm Dan Coughlin, and I'd like to welcome you to this edition of my Business Leadership video series. Today what I want to talk about are the 4 critical leadership questions. Over the past 30 years, the topic I've studied the most by far is leadership. I've read about 500 books, most of which had something to do with leadership. I've provided now over 2,000 executive coaching sessions, and I've invested about 3,000 hours on site observing and advising executives and managers in about 40 different organizations. So out of all this research on leadership, here are 3 things that I've learned. First of all, labels don't lead. Leadership is not based on title, income, or authority, and it's also not based on gender, height, race, size, or personality type. I've never seen a label that guaranteed that a person was going to be an effective or an ineffective leader. There's just no way to predict that based on the person's labels. The second thing I've learned is that leadership is about influence. The definition of leadership that I use is leadership means influencing how other people think so they make decisions that improve results in a sustainable way. Leadership means influencing how other people think so they make decisions. It's not about you doing all of the work or trying to do everything yourself. It's about your ability to influence how other people think. And then the third thing I've learned about leaders is leaders take the time to think. They don't just immediately rush into action, but they step back and they think about how they're going to approach the situation. And what I've noticed is there's a pattern among leaders where they answer what I call the 4 critical leadership questions. So I'm going to walk you through those right now. Question number 1 is, what's the desired outcome and why is it so important? The first act of leadership is prioritization. The biggest mistake that I have seen leaders make is when they try to take on too many outcomes simultaneously. And this is particularly true when somebody gets promoted from one level of responsibility to another level of responsibility. And so they try to take on too many outcomes and they dilute their impact on all of the outcomes. The second question is, who do you need to influence in order to improve the achievement of that outcome? Who are the individuals or the groups of individuals that you're going to have to influence? So I encourage you to write down those names, either the name of specific individuals or the names of groups that you're going to have to influence, so that you can picture them clearly in your mind. The third question is, how do you want these people to think before they make a decision? What are the 3 or 4 steps that you want them to think about, or what are the 3 or 4 ideas that you want them to consider before they make a decision? Now notice, question number 3 does not say, what do you need to tell them to do? Telling people exactly what to do is micromanaging. You might get a good short-term result by micromanaging somebody and telling them exactly what to do, but over the long term, there are some really big problems with micromanaging. One is, you end up with people who can't think for themselves, and then you have to be in the room with them or on the phone with them at all times to tell them what to do. Second problem is, you end up with a lack of a leadership pipeline. You don't have people coming up to the organization who are prepared to lead without you being in the room. And then the third problem is you end up losing good employees who go somewhere else where they are allowed to think for themselves. So the third question is, how do you want these folks to think before they make a decision? And it's not, what do you have to tell them to do? Then the last question, what leadership approaches are you actually going to use to influence the people that you've identified in question number 2? So what I'm encouraging you to do is to step back and really think about, actually, what are you going to do? Are you going to tell a story? Are you going to ask a question? Are you going to model a certain behavior? But what is it that you're going to do to influence these folks? What I've seen happen many, many times is a leader gets all excited about the goal and he or she jumps into action and then is not nearly as effective as he or she could have been because they didn't have a plan of how they were going to influence people. Now, over the course of this video series, I'm going to cover a variety of ways to influence people, different leadership approaches. But I encourage you to answer these 4 questions before you move into action. And again, what's the goal you're trying to achieve and why? Who do you need to influence? How do you want them to think before they make a decision? And then specifically, what are you going to do to influence these folks? So take care and have a great day.